You look like you deserve a fresh start to the new year, and there's nothing better than a classic California road trip. Everyone at Rush Creek Lodge and Spa at Yosemite is ready to welcome you with open arms and miles of smiles. Rush Creek's the ideal base camp for exploring Yosemite's wide open spaces, breathtaking scenery, and pristine mountain air. Go to rushcreeklodge.com and use promo code CHILL to get half off your third night on winter stays.
Say I talk too much, say I ask the wrong things, but if the truth feels weird, then I'm pulling that string. So quote me, it's probably nothing, just ask me questions, yeah that's my thing. Laughing through chaos, digging through lies, if it makes you uncomfortable, I'm doing it right. So quote me, it's probably nothing, say it too loud, now it's stuck in your head. If this all goes wrong, just remember I said probably nothing.
Did you just love that? Because I love that. Welcome back to Don't Quote Me, It's Probably Nothing. I forget what I'm supposed to say after that. Oh yeah, the podcast where I get high and talk about weird stuff. If you are new here, I get high and talk about weird stuff. I'm Kelly, and today is Friday, which means it's a deep dive. So we're going to dive deep down something. Just saying that actually reminds me of a story. Okay, so when I was in high school and I had chemistry class, I went to O'Hara, and the teacher that I had was Miss Kalanzi. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but if you went to O'Hara and you had Miss Kalanzi, then I don't know, we got something like in common or something. But anyway, she was talking about something and she mentioned the word teabag only because she was talking about tea, you know? And I was so dumb. I chuckled so hard and she caught me. She's like, I can't even say teabag around here. And every once in a while I think about that and I chuckle to myself. Just felt like sharing that with you. Today we are talking about the Malaysia Airlines flight 370. I think it's MH370 or something like that. But anyway, it's the commercial airplane that vanished in 2014 with 239 people on board, modern tracking technology, multiple communication systems, had all that. And then it disappeared. There was no distress call, no clear wreckage, and no answers. So grab your coffee or your water or like whatever it is that you want, you know? Like maybe, I don't know, some snacks, some chippies. Okay, so my daughter used to call chippies, she used to call chips chippies when she was little. And now I'm like, oh, I love chippies. And nobody knows what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's talk about MH370, shall we?
3-year-olds are fascinating little humans. They're in what's called the magic years, that sweet spot where their imagination explodes and they start becoming their own person. They're developing complex pretend play, speaking in
WTF
with 300 to 500 words, and mastering physical skills like hopping.
Alexa, off. Guys, I'm a little scared. My Alexa just started talking about children. Well, that's creepy. Okay, I just listened back to the recording, and I think I know why the Alexa went off. And it's because I said, so let's, real fast. And she probably thought I was talking to her. There isn't some, like, ghost or something in my house. I got a little scared, and I have to get high again because it's gone. Scared it right out of me. Maybe I am still high if I just laughed at that, because that probably was not even funny. But anyway, let's start at the beginning of this story because the beginning is a little unsettling. So, on March 8th, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 was scheduled to fly from, I'm going to mess this up, Kuala Lumpur, maybe, and it's in Malaysia, to Beijing, China. And it was a routine overnight flight, the kind that happens every single day all over the world, you know? And there were 239 people on board, 227 passengers, and 12 crew members. And like nothing about this flight was considered unusual. The aircraft was modern, the weather was normal, the pilots were experienced. There was like no red flags. So the plane took off at 12:41 a.m. local time. And for the first part of the flight, everything went exactly as expected. At 1:19 a.m., the cockpit made its last known radio transmission to air traffic control, and the co-pilot responded calmly with "Good night, Malaysian 370." And that sentence matters because there was no distress, no urgency, no confusion, and then just silence. About 1 minute later, the aircraft's transponder was switched off. And that's important because a transponder doesn't just like fail, and it doesn't usually turn itself off either. And it's not something that passengers can access, so it's not like they did something to it. When a transponder goes dark, it means the plane is no longer broadcasting its identity, altitude, or position to civilian radar systems. So from that moment on, MH370 essentially became invisible to standard air traffic control. And at first, no one panicked because planes switch from one airspace to another all the time, and brief communication gaps can happen, but like minutes passed, and then more minutes, and then it never checked in with the next control center. And that's when alarms started going off, literally and figuratively. And this is where it gets stranger. So although the plane disappeared from civilian radar, it didn't disappear from military radar. So sorry I keep saying so, by the way. I don't know why I do it. It makes me feel fancy, I think. Sometimes, Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just said that to make myself feel better. But anyway, so I have to say so. Okay. Military radar systems in the region later showed an unidentified aircraft believed to be MH370 changing course. And instead of continuing northeast towards China, the plane turned west, crossing back over the Malay Peninsula. Hopefully I pronounced that. It could be Malay, but it's Malay. Malay, whatever. But it was like flying over land that it had already passed. So it just like turned around, That turn is a big deal because commercial flights don't just casually make sharp course changes without communication. And it wasn't like a small correction. It felt like a deliberate deviation. And the aircraft continued flying west, then northwest, passing near the Strait of Malacca, which is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And also, I have another story to tell you. And the word that triggered that was the word Malacca. Okay, so when I was in high school, I used to hang out with this group of kids, and there was two people from Greece, I think. And his name was Phil. And he would always say Malacca for like no reason. I didn't know if it was like a made up word or a Greek word or a fake word. Well, that would be a made up word. But like, I didn't know if it was real or not, And it just became something that like we all kind of said to each other. And then we went to the movies with a different group of people, and we saw Benchwarmers. And the one part in Benchwarmers where Rob Snyder's talking to the short little guy that he bullied when he was younger, and he jumps out of his little cardboard castle that he made, and he's like, Malacca! When I tell you, it was me and one other person that laughed out loud so hard when that happened, and we got the strangest looks because nobody knew why we were laughing. But it was funny at the time because it's like, I thought it was a made up word. You might not think that's funny, but I did. So I shared it with you. But anyway, after that, the military radar contact was lost, but the plane was not done flying. And this is where all the satellite data comes in. So even though MH370 stopped communicating with air traffic control, also, I just want to say there is a very, very good chance that this could be like MH390, and I just typed it wrong the first time and continued to type it wrong. So just know that is a very high possibility. So if you have heard this before and you're like, oh, it's not 370, it's 390, just know, okay, I am probably wrong. But anyway, so even though it stopped communicating with air traffic control, the aircraft was still automatically pinging an Inmarsat satellite system. I might have pronounced that wrong, but it's INMARSAT. And for those who don't know what that is, like me, it's basically, I Googled it. It's basically like this thing that maintains like a background connection with a satellite, and then it like pings. So speaking of pings, I have to tell you about my shark. So I bought a shark necklace a long time ago, and when you buy it, you get a shark. But like if you didn't want a shark, you can buy a different animal. Like if you like sea turtles, you can buy a little sea turtle bracelet or necklace, and then you get a sea turtle to track. It's the most amazing thing in the whole wide world. Okay, so my shark is a great white, and her name is Caroline, and she's 12 feet long. She's so large, and I just want to hug her. She's so cute. I get a picture of her. Really, it's just her fin. They sent me a picture of her fin when they were tagging her, and she was splashing all around. That's the picture they gave me. It's not a great one. I wish they would have taken another one so I can see her face, but I still have her. And I just know she's the cutest shark ever. But anyway, so the reason I'm mentioning this at all is because I can see where she is because of the satellites and the pings that are created when she swims close enough to the surface. And actually, I am going to check right now to see where she last was. Because for a little while, she wasn't pinging, and I was so sad. It was like a year and a half that she didn't ping, and I thought she died, and I actually got really sad, and I was going to go on and get another shark, or like another animal. Yeah, look, so there's a live shark. So what's today's date? Just yesterday at 1:34 a.m., this shark's name is Goodall. And they got a good picture of his face. And like, this is a big picture. You can see every shark's face, but Bella looks like she is smiling. How cute is that? You can literally see every shark ever. Like, you can see their face. And of course, I can't see mine. That I'm going to get, hold on, I need to pause. Okay. I think Caroline, there's something wrong with her. I think. Okay, so her Z-ping, so they have Z-pings when they're not up long enough to get an actual ping. So that last one was almost a year ago, January 25th of 2025. And the most recent actual ping was November 4th of 2024. And she was tagged in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And let's see. Oh, it says here, sometimes the satellite things I don't know how long they last, but she was pinged in 2019. So hold on, I got to count on my fingers. That was 7 years ago, just about almost 7 years ago. So there's a chance that maybe her tracker just doesn't work anymore. But let's see where she was last pinged. She's been up and down the whole coast. Okay, she was last pinged in the Bahamas though, but she's gone all the way as far south as Mexico City. Hold on, in Veracruz, and then she goes all the way up. The furthest part she is like past St. John's, which I don't even know what state that is considered. Newfoundland? You know what? I'm looking on this map. I thought I was in America. I am not. I was up past. You know what? Oh my goodness. I learned something new today. Okay, so I didn't know that Newfoundland was literally attached to Canada. I thought that it was over near like Iceland and Ireland, like over that way, right? Or am I thinking of Finland? That's a possibility. I could be thinking of Finland. Why am I talking about this? Oh yeah, my shark. So that's where she was. She liked Bermuda a lot though, and the East Coast. And maybe she was down in Wildwood when I was down in Wildwood, and I just waved to her, you know? But yeah, so let's stop talking about this, and I'll start talking about what you guys are here to listen to. But also, I hope Caroline's not dead, because I don't know if I would be okay if Caroline didn't make it, you know? Because sharks basically live forever? There's some sharks that are 250 years old. You know what's wild? So many sea creatures live so long. And just different insects and stuff live so long. And what if they live so long because they're just like the goodest things, you know? Like sharks live so long because they're so cute and cuddly. And like some insects live so long because they're just nice insects. You know? Anyway, so these pings didn't say where the plane was, but they confirmed that it was still airborne. And the pings continued for hours. Based on the timing and spacing of those signals, analysts determined that the MH370 flew for approximately 6 to 7 hours after it vanished from radar, which means the plane didn't like crash immediately and it didn't explode. It didn't suffer like a catastrophic failure early on. It kept flying, obviously, because I just said that. So eventually those satellite pings stopped around 8:19 a.m., roughly 7.5 hours after takeoff. That final ping is widely believed to mark the moment that the aircraft ran out of fuel, and after that point, the plane would have descended, either gliding or falling into the ocean. But the problem is that no one can agree where. So using the satellite data, investigators narrowed the possible final locations to 2 massive areas. One extending north into Central Asia, and then one going south into the southern Indian Ocean. So the northern route was largely ruled out after extensive searches and geopolitical cooperation, and that obviously left the southern Indian Ocean, which, by the way, is one of the most remote, deep, and hostile regions on Earth, and search efforts were like unprecedented. So there were multiple countries who participated. There were ships, aircraft, underwater drones, sonar mapping, and yet no plane. Some pieces of debris believed to be from MH370 were later found, like washed ashore on islands in the Indian Ocean, places like Reunion Island and parts of Africa. It might actually not be Reunion because the E had that little weird thing above it. So however you pronounce that, is that island. But anyway, there was no black box or anything like that, and like no definitive crash site. And that's what makes this case like unbearable for so many people, because like a plane this size with this many people does not just vanish without leaving anything behind. I mean, maybe it could. Do you guys think that things really like vanish in the Bermuda Triangle? Sorry, Clarabelle snoring. I'll have to talk about that. Maybe I'll talk about the Bermuda Triangle next week. That actually sounds fun. So we might do that. It's actually one of the reasons why, because like I remember learning about the Bermuda Triangle in like 8th grade or something, or like maybe my teacher mentioned it once. I remember the weirdest stuff. Like I can't remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago, probably because I had nothing, but I can literally tell you the strangest thing from many, many years ago. Like I could probably tell you something like my kindergarten teacher wore one time. It's wild in my brain. Okay, quick pause. I want to tell you about Nighthawk Radio. I'm chuckling because like this is my attempt at doing like a little commercial break, you know? So, well, it's already not a commercial. I guess I can't use this one ever again. But anyway, if you're into podcasts and you like your content a little weird, a little spooky, or a little unhinged, this might be your place. Nighthawk Radio is an independent internet talk radio station with a lineup of really cool podcasts. Everything from true crime to sports to spooky to just straight up weird conversations you won't find on mainstream radio. Real creators, real voices, real discussions, and no algorithms trying to guess what you want to hear next. And yes, don't quote me, it's probably nothing, is on there. It airs on Nighthawk Radio every Sunday at 6 p.m. So if you're looking for something new to listen to and want to support independent podcasts, head over to nighthawkradio.com and check out the full show lineup. You can also listen on the Live 365 app if you want to do that too. That's something you could do. All right, back to whatever rabbit hole we were just in. Okay, now that we've talked about how MH370 disappeared and how long it kept flying, we need to talk about something that tends to get mentioned like on the down low, but never really goes away, you know? And that is who was on that plane. So it wasn't just tourists and families heading to Beijing. Among the passengers were highly specialized engineers and technical experts whose work was like not casual. So several passengers were employees of Freescale Semiconductor, which was a major company. It's a major global technology company involved in advanced electronics, aerospace components, and defense-related systems. They were senior engineers and specialists traveling for work-related reasons. Now, this doesn't mean that they were the reason the plane disappeared, but it does mean that people started asking questions, and those questions never really stopped. Because when a plane disappears in one of the most technologically monitored eras in history, people naturally look at everything, you know, including the passenger list. So one of the things that raised eyebrows early on was the concentration of expertise on board. Not one engineer or two, but like a cluster of people with highly specific technical backgrounds. Some of those engineers were reportedly connected to ongoing patent work involving sensitive technologies, including semiconductor manufacturing and defense-adjacent applications, like apps, you know? Now, that doesn't mean that the patents themselves are like a secret, but they are connected to intellectual property, corporate control, long-term contracts, and in some cases, government interests, which leads to the kind of speculation that thrives when answers are missing, because if MH370 had crashed normally and there was a wreckage and it had been recovered quickly, and if like the timeline made sense, then nobody would even be talking about this part, because they'd be like, oh man, that's terrible. But here, like the plane's completely missing. You know, sometimes I think there's people out there who think people are stupid, you know, like, oh, no one will notice this. Meanwhile, you have people like me who noticed all of the things in Stranger Things and were so freaking delusional that they thought an episode was coming out. And then they thought it was coming out again on the 12th within the documentary. I'm not going to lie, I was in my husband's ear literally every day. He was rolling his eyes at me. He was getting so annoyed that I had to like stop talking about it, because he was like, there's not going to be an episode. And I'm like, you're so negative. You're such a Debbie Downer. There's going to be an episode. I don't know why you're saying they're not, you know? And there was no episode. And I felt maybe like a little bit like a loser. And also maybe a little gullible. But anyway, there were also some questions about cargo. So the plane wasn't just carrying people, it was also carrying freight. Commercial flights often transport electronics and lithium batteries and industrial components in their cargo holds, like it's normal, but they can explode sometimes, you know. But anyway, what's not normal is how little clarity the public ever got about the full cargo manifest and how it was stored, or whether anything on board could have affected the flight. And there were early reports of lithium-ion batteries, which are known fire risks, but investigations never directly linked them to what happened. But also, if it was a fire situation, then you wouldn't have the course change, hours of like continuous flight, or like everything else that I've mentioned in this episode so far. But anyway, this is where the theories start coming in. Some people focus on the pilots, the cockpit access, mental state, training, and familiarity. Whoa. Said that on the first try. And then there are people who combine everything, especially when military radar data was partially classified. So satellite data had to be like reverse engineered, and search areas kept shifting, and like the government stopped talking. And families of the passengers have said repeatedly that what hurts most isn't just the loss, it's the lack of transparency. But there's like no version of the story where the plane just like wandered off. I mean, it could have. Like, what if there was like some type of gas leaking or something, you know, that caused them all to pass out? And then I feel like I saw this somewhere, and that's why I'm saying it. Like, maybe it was like what I saw, I think it was on TikTok, but it was like some type of gas filling carbon dioxide, maybe? Is that a gas? Sorry, my brain is fried right now, because like I know what carbon dioxide is. I learned about it. It's on the periodic table of elements. What am I talking about this for? Oh, yeah. So the plane filled with something, and then they all kind of just like passed out until they lost consciousness. And then, well, obviously, because when you pass out, you lose consciousness. But then they all like eventually die. And then the plane, because they use autopilot a lot, I think, it just like flew to wherever. And then when it ran out of gas, it crashed. That's what one of the things I saw. So what if that happened? But I feel like they would find the plane somewhere, you know? Maybe. What if it flew to Antarctica and they got kidnapped by the aliens? Huh? What about that? Think that happened? I should have grabbed my tinfoil hat for that one. But anyway, investigators and analysts eventually narrowed the possibilities into two broad categories: human control from inside the cockpit, or external or systems-based control from outside the cockpit. Both come with problems, so let's start with one people argue about the most. So, MH370's captain was experienced, highly trained, and very familiar with the Boeing 777. He had like thousands of flight hours and knew the aircraft inside and out. So there's some people who support the pilot theory that like he did it. So supports of the pilot theory point to a few specific things: the precise course deviating required, deep knowledge of airspace and navigation, and the plane avoided heavily monitored areas. The route taken could suggest that like the person knew like radar coverage gaps, you know, and the systems that went offline are accessible from the cockpit. In other words, if someone inside the cockpit wanted to disappear a plane, they technically could. Some investigators also noted that flight simulation software found in the captain's home included routes over the southern Indian Ocean, and that detail has been debated endlessly. Like, was it rehearsal or coincidence? Also, I don't believe in coincidences, so I don't think it was a coincidence. But anyway, there's no definitive answer, or I wouldn't be talking about it right now. But that's the problem, because while the pilot theory explains how the plane could have been redirected, it doesn't explain why, especially without like a manifesto or a message or communication from the pilot at all. There was like no note, no final transmission, no demands, no explanation. And for many people, that silence doesn't fit into like the psychological profile of intentional self-destruction. I know what I'm talking about, a psychological profile, because I watch a lot of Criminal Minds and Mindhunter and shows where the FBI gets involved and they're like, yeah, the guy looks like this. And I watch a lot of true crime, which means I'm basically a detective, you know? Also, speaking of that, so I was researching this case. I've been researching this case. Sorry, not researching. I've been working on it. I guess you could say I'm researching it too. But anyway, since 2021. Okay, maybe even 2020, but 2021 before I started doing anything with it. And it's literally 2026. And I'm doing a True Crime Tuesday episode about it soon. I'm like still working on it. It's been wild to put together because like I don't want it to end. I'm not ready. But anyway, I like released it and then took it off and then released it again and then took it off. And then I was like, no, I don't want to do it yet. I feel like there's more out there that needs to be said about it. Why am I telling you this? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the detective that I was talking to about this case, I was texting him one time and asking him questions, and he did not get my joke. Okay. Because a lot of people who listen to true crime, they're like, I'm basically a detective, like joking around, making a joke out of it. And I sent him a text message and I asked him a question about something. And I was like, I'm basically a detective. And he stopped talking to me after that. Sorry, Clarabelle just shook. She just woke up from a nap. But like, yeah, he stopped talking to me after that. And I was like, oh, maybe I offended him or something. I don't know. But I thought that was funny, and that's what that reminded me of. Anyway, it also doesn't explain why the plane flew until fuel exhaustion, if it did. And like no attempt was made to land, or why the disappearance was so clean anyway. Because like we have not found a plane, you know? And obviously, like when they said they found pieces of the plane, yeah, okay, buddy, I believe you. Not. Anyway, I think that's the meanest I've ever gotten about something. So if you want to know, I feel like that was really sassy. Like I should have done the snap finger thing, like, I feel like that was a big thing in the 90s, like when I was younger, you know? I feel like we did that a lot. I feel like it was on TV a lot, on TV shows a lot too. I'll BRB, I gotta take my dog outside, and I go outside with her. I spend time with her because she's the cutest thing ever, and she's not going to be here forever, you know? So I make sure to treat her like a little princess, so she has the best life ever. Also, literally when I come home from work, if I'm the first one here, I'll come inside real quick, and she's usually laying on our bed upstairs, and I'll come inside and I'll run the opposite way of the steps and I'll hide. And then I hear her come down the steps, and like as soon as she hits the hardwood, and her nails like clickety clack on the floor, and like she's walking all slow and I can hear where she's going. So I'll like stay hidden, and then she'll like, because she goes kind of fast and runs into the living room to see like who it is, and then she'll stop and be confused because nobody's there, so she'll walk real slow. So when she gets close, I jump out and I yell boo, and I scare her, and she like jumps back every time, but then she gets real excited. And I literally do it every single day, and it's the cutest thing ever. And then I smother her with kisses, but like I feel like I'm just setting myself up for heartbreak when she's not here anymore, but I'm still going to do it anyway because it makes my heart happy that my Burkle Pants is so happy. But anyway, I'm going to go take her outside now. I'll BRB. Okay, I'm back. So let's talk about the external control theory. So this theory suggests that control of the aircraft was influenced or taken from outside the cockpit, either partially or fully. So modern aircraft are not purely mechanical. They rely on flight management computers, autopilot systems, satellite communications, and like software layers. And while commercial aircraft are heavily protected, they're not immune to vulnerabilities. Some aviation experts have raised concerns about whether autopilot settings could be manipulated, or if flight management systems could be altered, or control could be influenced remotely under specific circumstances. And this theory gained traction because the flight followed smooth, deliberate paths, altitude changes appeared controlled, and the aircraft maintained stability for hours. It didn't behave like a hijacking, and it didn't behave like it was in a panic situation. It behaved like it was like doing something normal, you know? Critics of this theory argue that fully remote takeover of a commercial jet would be extremely difficult and unlikely, but unlikely is not the same as impossible, my guy. But there's also a lot of analysts who are like, okay, but what if it isn't either or, you know? Like, what if someone inside the cockpit initiated changes, which would be the pilot, and then systems were then left on autopilot, and then control shifted gradually. Like if the plane was like guided into isolation, like the pilots turned something off and then put it on autopilot, and then something else took it over. You know, that would explain the long silent flight and lack of communication. Also, what if there is like, so what if it got taken over, like I said, if it went to Antarctica or tried to go to Antarctica, you know, under cover of the night, and it had like an invisibility cloak, right? And like it flew somewhere to get plane fuel, jet fuel, I mean, and nobody saw it because of the invisibility cloak. Clock that. My kids will kill me if they hear that. But anyway, basically every single explanation runs into the same problem, and that is that we don't have the plane. Without the plane, there's no black boxes, no cockpit voice recorder, no flight data recorder. We're literally all just guessing. Educated guesses. But at this point in the story, most investigations would like give you something solid to hold on to, you know? Like a wreckage. Or like, hey, this is what happened. And this gives us none of that. Instead, it leaves us with a lot of questions, much like all of my episodes. So let's talk about some of those questions, shall we? So why was there no distress call? So like in aviation, pilots are trained to communicate, especially in emergencies. Even like partial system failures usually come with like a garbled message or a rush call or something. But like MH370 gave nothing. There was like no mayday, no panic transmission, like not even a hint that something was wrong. So that silence is information, okay? And then why disable the tracking system but leave the plane flying? So if this were a catastrophic failure, everything would have failed together. And they didn't. The plane lost its transponder and lost radio contact, but kept power, altitude, and kept flying. And then if there was a problem on board, why fly away from help? Because the closest airports were behind the plane, to the sides, and within reachable distance. Instead, they literally turned away from like populated airspace and flew toward the open ocean. Guys, what if there's this thing, you know, that like when you get close to this one part of the ocean, this thing comes up, right? Like the water lifts up. You ever see the things on... I feel like this was somewhere, maybe Despicable Me, but that was like kind of under the ocean. But they're like in the ocean or some type of water, and then they go underneath, and there's this whole anti-villain league something layer or something, you know what I'm talking about? What if this is something like that? What if they flew there and that's where these scientists are working? And maybe what if the civilians on the plane, well, there's a lot of civilians, but like the not engineers, you know, the other people, what if they were just other people that worked there that did regular jobs, like office people, you know? So what if that's what happened? What if they're working on something secret? Okay, there's a theory out there. I'm not crazy, okay? I'm just really high at the moment. So, have you guys heard about like the Leviathan thing under the ocean? What if that's what they're there for? Okay, that's another episode I'm going to be talking about. But that stuff goes wild on TikTok. But anyway, another question is, why was military radar data so limited and delayed? Like multiple countries tracked something that night, but some data was classified, some were released late, and some were incomplete. And families of passengers have asked the same questions for years. If the plane was tracked, why can't we see everything? And why does transparency stop where answers might begin, you know? And also, I mentioned this a few times already, but like, why hasn't the wreckage been found? Like, we literally find ships lost centuries ago and like aircraft deep in water and smaller than a Boeing plane, you know? But like, this entire plane has not been recovered. Like, just fragments, you know? They could be fake, you know? Someone could have wrote that shit on there with Sharpie. But like, what if this whole thing is like a mystery that we are never meant to solve? Because if we solve it, that means, you know, something really weird happened or something really messed up's going on, you know? Also, my bad, because I think I may have rambled on a lot. And I was almost about to sing Ramble On from Led Zeppelin to you guys. So, like always, be grateful I didn't. If this episode made you uncomfortable, confused, or like left you staring at the ceiling for a little longer than usual, good. That's kind of the point. If you enjoyed the show or have been enjoying it for a while and haven't yet, make sure you follow, rate, and review on Spotify or wherever you're listening. It tells the world that I think I'm funny. Shout out to those listening on Nighthawk Radio. If you haven't checked them out yet, go do it. Pretty please. Maybe you will find your new favorite show. The song of the week this week is World Falls Apart by Reece Ratliff. Also, in case you were wondering, I pronounced his name right, which is not on brand for me. I'll be back next time with more questions, more weird, and more, I don't know, more crazy or something like that, you know? Until then, stay weird, stay curious, go be kind to someone for no reason, and go be amazing.
Cold bones, stone heart, trained to run when it gets too hard. But you saw hope in my broken part. Your ancient soul, a brand new star. Crown me a king of the universe, a starlit queen from a dying earth. It's dark outside and it's getting worse, getting worse. All I know is when time stops, I wanna spend every moment in your arms. And when the sky falls, I wanna watch from the mountaintop. Darling, we can dance in the dark. When time stops, I spend every moment in your arms as the world falls apart. Armies clash at the castle door. Time stops, I wanna spend every moment in your arms. And when the sky falls, I wanna watch from the mountaintop. When the lights go out, darling, we can dance in the dark. When time stops, I wanna spend every moment in your arms. The world falls apart. When time stops, wanna spend every moment in your arms.
You look like you deserve a fresh start to the new year, and there's nothing better than a classic California road trip. Everyone at Rush Creek Lodge and Spa at Yosemite is ready to welcome you with open arms and miles of smiles. Rush Creek's the ideal base camp for exploring Yosemite's wide open spaces, breathtaking scenery, and pristine mountain air. Go to rushcreeklodge.com and use promo code CHILL to get half off your third night on winter stays.